My name is Levi McPherson. I am an entrepreneur, speaker, author, coach, strategist, and I am an outlier.
Welcome to Outlier on Air with Ever Gonzalez, the show where we interview the founders, disruptors, and mavens of the world. Learn how grit, failure, and success are all a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Levi McPherson. He is a business growth strategist, entrepreneur, inventor, author, speaker, trainer. Levi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You have quite the resume. You are a busy, busy man. So we're excited to have you on. We want to talk about a lot of different things, your background, what you're working on now. We're going to talk about mastermind groups, just business success in general. So this is going to be a fun interview. And also you're a Utah boy, which we like having on the show. So tell us exactly where you're calling us from in Utah.
So I live in a little bedroom community called Saratoga Springs. It's a lakeside community. I call it our vacation community.
So smaller town, right? What's it close to?
It'd be close to Lehigh or Salt Lake City if you're not familiar with Utah.
And for you right now with what you're doing business-wise, and we'll get into the details here in just a sec, what's it like living there? I mean, as far as the entrepreneurial scene, startup scene, business scene, anything like that, does it affect what you do on a daily basis?
Actually, with it being so close to Salt Lake and being tucked right into Utah County, that's been labeled, I think, favorably by us as Silicon Slopes.
Yes.
This is a great place to do business. It truly is. There are phenomenal entrepreneurs here that are very forward-thinking, and so I absolutely love it.
So you're in a perfect spot, and I love it up there just because a lot of universities kind of cranking out a lot of talent, a lot of smart, young, ambitious entrepreneurs, employees, that type of thing. Plus, you have a lot of startups and just strong, healthy companies kind of adding to that whole vibe up there. We read time after time a lot of different positives about the area. Are there any negatives that you've noticed, that you've seen, that you've been able to experience?
As far as negatives,
or just small drawbacks, something like that.
Yeah, only drawbacks. I mean, it took me a while to decide that I was going to stay put here in Utah, and that's just that I grew up on a small farm in Idaho, so there's a reason why I put myself in a bedroom community. I like population, but not too close.
That's right. So you're close enough to be able to interact as often as you want, but you're still kind of far away enough where you can just kind of live a quieter life, I guess. That's perfect.
Yes.
That's what we have here in St. George, which, coming from Southern California, this was a huge kind of a change for us, and it took us about 2 years to kind of get used to it. And now, 11 years later, we're still here. So I hear you, and congratulations on your success and being in that area. Now let's get into the meat of all this, right? Like we talked about at the top of the show, you're a business growth strategist, an entrepreneur, author, speaker, trainer. I mean, you've done quite a bit in your young career here. Let's start from where you are now and work our way back. So let's start with Switchpoint Strategy. Tell us what it is, what you're doing with it.
Okay, so Switchpoint Strategies is actually a name that just evolved from a business process that I use to turn around companies. I started out as a turnaround guru. I'd go in with a group of investors and would flip businesses. And so what I found in doing that is that there's something I call the law of outcomes, which is simply that every result you receive, whether or not it's in business or in your personal life, it's always attached to a process. And I realized this in my first turnaround project that, hey, if I look at that process and I go all the way backwards down the line, there is a point where you can basically pull the switch and you can create high leverage. And so I literally started just creating within my business what I call switch point strategies. I'd go, I'd say, this is the result that we're currently receiving. It sucks. I don't like it. So how do we achieve an optimal result? And so we just go backwards down that process line and say, where's the earliest area where we have leverage, where we have high influence? And then we're going to apply our efforts there. And 9 times out of 10, that would not only fix the problem, it would usually revolutionize whatever result that we were trying to achieve there.
So I like what you said. So 9 times out of 10. What's the outlier, right? What's that one time where you can turn around? Are there specific things that you see in companies that you're like, you know what, as much time and resources that we put into this, it's just not going to make it? I mean, are there red flags that are apparent in those type of situations, or right, or is it just a fluke every once in a while?
So as far as the outliers, yeah, certainly you're going to get flukes, but there's a lot of variables at play. And so, I mean, the pillars of wealth or the wealth engines. Mm-hmm. You invest in people, you invest in products, you invest in processes, you invest in property. Well, sometimes in that process of trying to identify a switch point, you might have the wrong people involved. You might have the right strategy, but you have the wrong people involved. And that's typically, for me personally, what I've run into when a strategy doesn't execute the way that I want it to. It's normally that we have the wrong people on the bus.
Are you coming in as a consultant when you work with these projects, or are you coming in as somebody that's funding this now, and you're looking to kind of turn around and sell it as quickly as possible, or is it a combination of all these different angles that you're coming in?
It's a combination. I mean, I have a lot of clients that I mean, it's purely a transactional relationship. I have others that are on a joint venture basis, and then I have my own ventures that I'm developing.
I like how early on you kind of discovered that you have this talent, right? I mean, not everybody has it, and you discovered it early on. Why don't you talk to us about your first experience, kind of seeing this, and I guess being able to walk through the process and being able to think to yourself, I think I can kind of save this, and what went into that?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because it was rolling off of a failure. I got married, and I was still in college. I decided that I wanted to be a financial planner because those guys got to wear cool suits and they got to work in those fancy brick buildings. Nice. And so I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. And I tried my hand at it, and I spent the first 6 months doing what they told me to do, which was go out and knock doors take somebody with you because it's emotionally draining. And what I found was I'd go out and I'd knock doors with people, and then then they'd disappear while I followed up and closed the deal. And then I ended up giving away half of my check to mm-hmm. them. And when it finally dawned on me that, hey, wait, I'm working twice as hard and I'm giving away half my check, I thought, this is the worst thing on the planet. But something inside me said, no, actually, this is the best thing in the world. Because if I'm dumb enough to do that, that means everybody else is too. So I, with another, I'll call enlightened agent, we decided to hire a telemarketer to set appointments for us. Basically, we hired a gal, we created a process, and she set up enough appointments for us enough appointments for 5 agents. Wow. And so we'd approach the other agents in the office and say, hey, I can't make it to this appointment. If you close the deal, let's split the commissions. And, we were rolling forward thinking this was the greatest thing ever until management found out about it, and that just wasn't the way things were done. And so in very short time, I found myself out of that financial planning world and kind of looking for a job. And I saw an ad for a sales vice president position. I thought, you know what, I'm qualified for that. I'm going for it. So I went down to an interview. I walked into this dingy little cabinet shop, and I'm staring across the table from a kid that's, I think he was a year younger than me. And he tells me, I'm actually looking for a business partner. And what I didn't know at the time is he had just barely bought it. He had borrowed $8,000 from his dad, and he was scared out of his mind because he was getting collection letters in the mail every single day. He was getting threatened to be sued. He didn't know how to generate sales. He was a good marketer, but didn't know how to generate sales. And so he said, I need a partner. So I came on with him, and we literally, it took us about 4 months to figure out the sales system, but we literally went through every single process in that company and determined where are those switch points. And we took that $8,000 investment, and in just 18 months turned it into just under $1 million. And we sold the business.
Yeah. How did that? I mean, so this is kind of your first stab at this. What was your background as far as education? Where, there's a difference between being a good sales guy and being able to turn around a company like that. How did that happen?
So a couple of advantages there. I have loved business and entrepreneurship, honestly, since I was a young teenager. In junior high, I told everybody I was going to invent stuff and I was going to own businesses, plural. I started reading business books when I was in junior high. And so it looks like, yeah, he just showed up and did some things, but I had read a ton of business books. Right before I did a mission for my church, I had worked lawn care for a couple of years, and I had checked out every audio program that the local library and the college library had and listened to them while I rode around on a Toro lawnmower. Nice. For 8 to 10 hours a day.
That's a great story. Good for you.
So I went into that, and then my business partner, who I still consider him an absolute genius, his name is Jason Peterson. He was a 2-time national debate champion. He's a genius. And so what we did is we picked what would be considered a low sophistication industry, and we applied sophistication to it. Mm-hmm. We applied, basic business practices, and some of them a little bit more advanced. And as a result, we were able to, in essence, crush our competition and do it very, very quickly.
Is that still the mindset? Is that still the formula that you kind of go after right now with the companies that you decide to work with? And are they across different industries, or is it pretty much the same?
So I currently don't fully employ that across the board. I kind of chase a little bit more either passion businesses or relationships. People that I know that they get it, and I'm going to be able to work with them. If I'm not, even from a client standpoint, if they're not forward thinking, they can't discipline to a strategy, then I honestly don't have the energy for that anymore.
How much time are you spending? Because I know you do a few different things, and we're going to talk about that here in just a sec. But so, how much time are you spending doing this, working with clients like this, or partners, trying to either turn around or build these type of companies?
Currently, I'm only spending about 20 or 30% of my time on that.
Okay. What does that look like, right? I mean, I'm assuming sometimes you're a little bit more involved, and other times maybe more of an advisory board type of position. What's it like on average?
So yeah, that's correct. So basically, normally what I'm fixing from a strategic standpoint, and this is the same thing that I found going into turnaround businesses, even my own ventures, is that normally there's 3 things. Well, there's usually one thing that's working and 2 things that are broken. And so you imagine a 3-legged stool. So you got your finances, you got your operations, and you have your sales and marketing. And normally, it's operations that's working, but either finances or the sales and marketing are broken. And so, because I'm not necessarily the accountant type, I choose not to focus on that area as much. So I focus my energy on the sales and marketing side. And so what I'm doing for these clients is I go in personally and I help map a marketing strategy for them. And then I turn it over to my team to deploy various online tools, content strategy, so on and so forth.
Out of all the companies that you worked with, how many have you felt good about? Your participation in. I mean, I'm assuming there have been some failures. Either you can give us numbers as far as 4 or 5 companies, or percentages. What is that ratio from successful exits to maybe some that didn't work out as well as you wanted?
So that's a really good question. I would say, as far as companies that I didn't necessarily feel good about the exit, I don't know. I can't really throw a percentage at it without kind of looking back through it. But I can give you some of the commonalities on the ones.
Sure, absolutely. That was going to be the next question. Absolutely. What are some of the things that you see in common?
So some of the commonalities that I've seen in those that don't execute well. The vision leader doesn't take full ownership for that vision. So what's very common in my line of work is that you'll have an entrepreneur that they'll get caught up in the strategy, in my strategy, and then they'll try and transfer ownership over my direction. So I show up as the guy on the white horse, and next thing I know, they're expecting me to build their business model for them. And it's very common also, in the startup world, but it can be very common in the turnaround world as well. So ones that don't have a full passion for what it is they're doing. And then another commonality that I encounter, and this is actually helpful for your audience as well, for those that are early stage entrepreneurs or even just considering entrepreneurship. If you don't have at least a basic grasp of branding, marketing, and sales, it's very hard to succeed in the business world. And so you can pull in someone like me or my team, and we can help with execution. We can help with strategy. But at the end of the day, it's you have to have an understanding in your own venture on what your brand really is and what you really stand for. And then outside of the marketing, sales execution. We can bring people to the door, but you've got to ultimately be the one that converts at the end of the day.
And so that's tough, right? I mean, we as entrepreneurs, we kind of feel like we can do just about anything at times, and then there are other times in our journey where we're like, "Oh man, I don't know how to do anything." So, are you getting the seasoned entrepreneurs or founders, or are you working with a lot of these younger first-time entrepreneurs? Who's knocking on your door to come help?
So it's more of a type. I get a mixture. We prefer to work with those that are a little bit more seasoned, meaning sweet spot is emerging businesses, right? They've been around the block at least once, and they want to get to the next level, and they're willing to invest to get there. Startups are fun because there's a ton of passion, but unless they're funded properly, those can be a challenge. We can give them guerrilla strategies. Those are typically the type that I say, hey, here's your guerrilla strategies, here's your guerrilla toolbook. Now go and get yourself to a level where you're able then to come to us and we're able to insert ourselves.
The ones that you've had a lot of success with doing this, the ones that don't make it or are to the point where you're comfortable or that you would have liked, is it like your baby where it kind of hurts when it doesn't make it, or are you far enough removed? I mean, you've invested some time and some resources in it, but are you far enough removed where it's easy for you to kind of transition to the next project? I know as entrepreneurs, whenever we fail or whenever something doesn't work out, I mean, we read across the board that these these guys, have a hard time getting back up, or
Yeah.
they suffer
Yeah,
from
yeah.
depression a little bit. What at your level, what does that look like for you?
So that's a great question. I'd say early on it used to really get to me. Um, when I would try and coach entrepreneurs through the process, and I'd share with them what they needed to do, would break out a strategy, and then they do the complete opposite because human nature would kick in,
Uh-huh.
and they'd follow the path of least resistance. And then if their business didn't get to the next level, or I've even had one or two of them actually fail because they did exactly the opposite of what I told them to do. I used to take it personally because in my line of business and in business in general, reputation is a premium. And the more success stories I have, obviously, the easier it is for me to garner clients. So I used to take it really personal. I've just kind of learned over time to see the trends and to know when to fire a client. And I know that sounds backwards because normally, people are looking at the other direction,
Mm-hmm.
like they're looking to fire, their vendors. But
Yep.
I've learned when to fire a client.
And it's hard to do, but sometimes you just have to do it, right?
Absolutely. You absolutely need to, because if you have a bad client, it can sour a lot of things in your business, and even it can spill into your personal life.
We host a lot of entrepreneurial events, conferences, pitch competitions, and obviously with the podcast, we've interviewed 350 plus entrepreneurs and at different levels doing different things. One of the things that I see that they have in common, for the most part, the successful ones, are that they either are searching for outside help, whether it's mentoring or coaching or things like that, or they've been part of or are currently part of mastermind groups. Now that you are working with mastermind groups, you've facilitated mastermind groups. Um, Tell us your experience with hosting them, facilitating them, putting them together, and how it started.
Okay, great. I absolutely love mastermind groups. I think they are one of the best kept secrets in business. Um, and I run two different types of mastermind groups. I run an entry level mastermind group. I run one that's called Inner Circle, where you're getting you know inoculation, right? You're getting to be the fly on the wall on conversations kind of like the one that we're having now, but we're pulling in individuals that have really made some traction in their business and their lives. There's one thing that I always say to people: one of the greatest secrets that there is on the planet, the best shortcut out there is, if you want to do something, find somebody that's already succeeded at it, and then either hire them or find a way to ask them the questions and garner their advice. So we have a low end mastermind group that we do that with, and then we have a high end mastermind group that's called Business NOS. And how I got into creating mastermind groups was I kind of got tired of traditional networking. And I don't mean to offend anybody by what I'm about to say, but a lot of the traditional networking, I call them card flicking meetings. They tend to be very shallow.
Sure.
You have people there that are very transactional, and they're not sophisticated enough in business to realize that they need to invest in the relationship. And so the problem that I kind of uncovered there is it's really trust. We do business with people that we know, like, or trust. And so I was going to some of these traditional networking meetings, and I'm like, you know what? I end up only finding one person, and I go deep, and that's fine for me. But I see a lot of other people that don't seem to be making traction here, and it's frustrating because they're spending money to be part of the group. And I'd seen some that had been part of the group for over a year and not really made an ROI. This is the reason why is that there's not trust. And so I read a study about social sharing, and in the study they threw a bunch of people in a gym, and they made them do jumping jacks next to each other, amongst other things. But they found just making them do jumping jacks next to each other for 5 minutes they were 40% more likely to share something personal with the guy right next to him who was a complete stranger before the 5 minutes. So I looked at that and said, you know what, if you can do that in 5 minutes doing jumping jacks, what would happen if we all got in, say, for example, a Lamborghini and just punched it? Or what would happen if we, went out into the desert and started blowing stuff up, or, shoot machine guns or whatever? And so Business NOS was born from this idea that we can accelerate business by accelerating trust. And so what we would do is once a month would take these high-end entrepreneurs. Now, these are individuals that sold their companies for tens of millions of dollars, and basically watched them act like complete kids. And what we found was that literally millions of dollars of transactions happened because trust almost happened instantly.
So what does that look like? They're getting together once a month, and what are you doing?
Once a month we're doing we're doing sword fighting, we're doing golf cart polo. I mean, anything crazy you can think of where you either have a lot of adrenaline or a boatload of laughter. That's what we were doing.
And business is still being done, right?
Yes, and business is still being done. So our model is basically, do something high octane first. I always like to say it this way, that if you and I get together over lunch, we're acquaintances. But if you and I go and jump off a cliff together, we're brothers.
Agreed.
So basically, what we do is a high octane activity first, and then would do a business segment where we'd do what we call the connect to profit model. And all that is that we found that there's 6 profit channels that every entrepreneur has to plug into in order to grow their business at some juncture or another. And this tells you probably more how my brain thinks, but it follows the acronym of the word profit. So they need to connect to the right people, the right resources, the right opportunities, the right funding, the right information, and the right technology. And so would take that and say, all right, in your business this month, what relationships do you need to help you to leverage one of those profit channels? So which profit channel do you need the help with most right now? Well, right now we're really struggling with our technology. Everything's outdated. Okay, well, who do you need to connect with? And so we'd go do these knee-to-knee conversations, and we would swap relationships as a currency.
Yes, I love that.
So that was the experiment we did on the high end, and
so are these local to Northern Utah? They must be, right?
Not entirely.
Okay.
We actually had people flying in from other states as well to be part of this group.
And the inner circle, the beginner one, is that an online type of a meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a virtual meeting.
Okay.
And it's more of a primer.
And is that anybody can join, or are there specific things that they have to either have or do to be part of this?
Anyone can join that. In fact, I'll get you the link after this session. But anybody can join that, and kind of the focus on that one that also is a little bit unique. You've heard this lonely at the top. This as an entrepreneur. The hardest thing that I think we have to do as entrepreneurs, because by nature, I think at least half of us, maybe most of us, are ADD. And so accountability is a struggle for us. And so we put together Inner Circle as an attempt to enhance accountability amongst those that think like we do. And so that's one of the components that we build into that mastermind group.
With everything that you're doing, right, with helping some of these companies turn around with mastermind groups, we haven't even talked about you being the author and the speaker and the trainer. Your plate is full, right? What challenges do you have personally in your own entrepreneur journey, right? Whether right now or some recent that you've struggled with. We all struggle with something. What is it for you?
So I would say that there's a few different struggles, and one of them you already identified. So there's a conversation that I had with a world famous artist that's plagued me my entire career. So I had a conversation with a world famous artist where I was asking him why he wasn't doing a business venture instead of painting. And he told me that if you chase two rabbits into the woods, you lose them both.
Yes.
And so I struggled with that for years. I'm like, man, I'm running multiple ventures, and there's all these things that I want to do to bless the world. I really want to help people to prosper. And so it wasn't until very recently I had a conversation with this famous artist's son that he said, well, what if you're not supposed to be chasing rabbits? What if you're supposed to be chasing chickens? I'm like, well, okay, I like this shift in the analogy, but what do you mean? He says, well, rabbits, right? You're going to chase them down and you're going to kill them, and then that's it. But chickens, they lay eggs. You don't have to force them to lay the eggs. They lay the eggs because they do it by nature. And I was like, oh my goodness, you just gave me one of the biggest breakthroughs I think I've had in years. So you look at what I do and you say, oh my goodness, he's doing so many things. How in the world can he keep up with all that? Well, if they're rabbits, yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But if they're chickens, meaning they're assets, they're businesses, there's people in place, or there's systems in place, there's technology, there's automation, there's leverage, then you can do a lot more. So you look at entrepreneurs like Richard Branson. How many ventures has that guy done? And how many did he do simultaneously?
Sure.
You do it by having the right people and the right processes in place. And so my challenge, it's still a struggle, is trying to make sure I have that mixture of the right strategy, the right people, and the right processes. And where I really run into a struggle, there's the psychological component, but then, there's always the cash flow component. You can only stretch yourself so thin financially before you've gotten yourself in trouble.
Sure.
So I've had to be a little bit smarter there than perhaps I've done in the past on some of my ventures.
You recognize it though, and so it's something that you're working on, which is more than we can say for a lot of us, right? At any point in our career. So congratulations for being able to identify that. Now with what you just said, then what is all of this, right, going to look like for you in 3 years? When we have you back on the show in 3 years or so, what are we going to be talking about?
So when you have me back on the show in 3 years, a few things will have happened. One, my marketing strategy company, it will be self-sufficient, or it will be sold. I'll only maintain it so that I can run my own projects through it. I will spend most of my time on high leverage investments, meaning if it's not a systemized product, something that can truly help others, and I don't have to be there to pull the lever, then I probably didn't get where I wanted to be within the next 3 years. But that's where I'll spend most of my time in the next 3 years, developing products that are high leverage, and then just focusing on influence, focusing on relationships. I'll spend more time. I've gotten a lot more into speaking. I published a couple of books.
Do you enjoy that part of it, the speaking, the books? Because those are time consuming as well, right? And some people do it because they want the exposure, the connections. Do you enjoy the speaking part of it?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's almost as much of a rush as it is coming up with a new business concept.
Nice. How often? What do you? Last 6 months, speaking wise, what do you try to do in a year? I guess.
So I try to have a minimum of one speaking engagement a month.
Good. Yeah.
I usually average 1 or 2 a month. That's about the threshold of what I can handle at this point.
And you are also an author, right? You've written a New York Times bestseller. Tell us about. Was this the one with Johnny Dumas and Barbara from Shark Tank?
Yeah, so basically that project, that book actually didn't go New York Times bestseller yet, but
Yet, yeah,
Barbara, who was in the book, is a New York Times bestseller.
I see.
And that project is actually a fascinating one because, I talk about processes quite a bit, and I don't know a single entrepreneur, period, that doesn't want to be an author, that doesn't want to have written a book. And they all run into the exact same problem that that we all run into is like time. How do I get the time to
Yes,
write a book?
yes,
And so what we did with that book is we said, you know what, instead of making people sit down with a pen and paper and write books, what if you could be a fly on the wall and listen to an interview um, of entrepreneurs and hear those insights? And so what we did, John interviewed Barbara, and then I interviewed a handful of other entrepreneurs, and then we transcribed those and we actually put them in a book. So that's why it's called Conversations with Visionary Leaders. So it's a conversation style book. It's not it's not a Malcolm Gladwell style book, even though he
sure.
is my favorite author.
He's great.
Where you pick a one concept that you're going to just dissect and blow up. So is that book still coming? Well, just between us, I've started and stopped. I can't even count how many books since I was in my early 20s.
Really?
So
So it's in your
yeah,
blood. This is something you're doing. You're gonna do. You're gonna continue to do.
absolutely.
Nice. I love it. Now, as we kind of wrap this up a little bit, last few questions. What is the? We've talked a little bit about you and the things you do and the processes and maybe some of the things that you struggle with a little bit. But so, what is the single most important reason for your success?
The single most important reason for my success is that I understand the rule: if you change your process, you will change your outcome. I was told by that same famous artist that had the rabbit conversation, never fall in love with something so much you're afraid to change it. I watched him spend months painting a little, 1 foot square spot and then take out paint thinner and erase it because
Oh,
it didn't fit with the overall design.
uh-huh. That's rough, right?
It's rough, but that's how you become that's how you become the best in the world at something.
Listen, you're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of them are, I'm sure, are nodding their head. We understand that concept, and it's harder to kind of put into action, right? And I think it's going to be a lifelong struggle for most of us. But good. So that's one of the biggest reasons for your success. I'm hoping that a lot of us can obviously learn from you and your story and your advice here that we can do it as well, right? I mean, there's no reason why if we focus, if we change the things that we need to change, if we are in mastermind groups and surrounded by ambitious, happy people, there's no reason why, for the most part, we can't make it as well. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. As we kind of say goodbye, where can we find you online? For those of us that are interested, that want to get to know you a little bit more, maybe check out the mastermind groups and the books. Tell us where we can find you.
So easiest way is just Google me. You'll find I own my page. So LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to connect with me. Outside of that, on an entry level, you can come join us in the Inner Circle Mastermind group. I'll get you the link for that to share with your group. And but I love entrepreneurs. I'm absolutely passionate about helping entrepreneurs to get to the next level. So um, invitations, seriously, reach out, and I'd love to help any way that I can.
I love it. So Outliers, you can go to outliermagazine.co. That's outliermagazine.co. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it. But there you're going to find links to Levi's LinkedIn account, website, social media accounts. Feel free to Send him a note, say hello, connect with him. Obviously, from this episode, you can tell that this guy's the real deal and he's doing something that's pretty cool. Levi, again, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, for your words of wisdom, just for being open and talking to our audience about your entrepreneurial journey. So we thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
No